Welcome to another edition of Game Changers for Government Contractors. I'm your host, Mike Lejeune. Today, I have Jenny with me, and we are going to be talking about a really interesting topic. We're going to be talking about how government budget owners, CEOs, all those kind of folks, not only find you, but do some evaluation based on this new digital age and how things are. So I'm really looking forward to this topic, Jenny. I think it's going to be really fun. But before we hop into that and talk that, why don't you give everybody a little bit of info on who you are and kind of your background?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share insights into how government buys. I'm Jenny Karn, and I am a co founder of Lumino. We are a marketing agency that specializes in helping government contractors grow. So I'm excited to share some insights from a survey we recently conducted where we asked government budget owners how they are finding and evaluating and selecting vendors today.
Yeah, the survey is always interesting to me because the reason we even exist as a podcast today was a survey we did years and years ago. So, tell me a little bit about the survey, kind of like why you commissioned it, like where that came from, and then we can get into maybe some of those results and dig deeper in it.
Excellent. Yes, we want to be able to offer our clients best in class advice. We want to let them know what strategies are working and how they can best reach their buyers in today's market. And to offer that advice, we really felt like we wanted some data. We had a lot of
Mm.
hunches and some anecdotes and some success stories, but we didn't have hard data. So we commissioned a third party research firm to conduct a study for us. We worked with them to put together the questions, and then they executed it, found people in the right roles to answer the questions and shared the data with us. And then we put together this report, which we'll talk through today.
Yeah, and I assume that report is live somewhere on your website, and if people want to go check that out, they can go grab that report somewhere.
Absolutely. I can share a link with you as well
Okay.
so
I'll
that.
put that in the description of the podcast so they don't have to try and remember like, or
Perfect.
anything like that. So talk to me a little bit about what you found in the study.
Yeah. So I think really three things stood out to us in the results that were surprising. Number one is how often government buyers are just like you and me in our personal lives. When they're looking for answers, when they're looking for solutions, when they want a new vendor to help them solve a problem, they're going to search. They're opening up Google or maybe Bing, but they are going to a search engine to look for those answers, just like they do in their personal lives. So, yes, there are all sorts of databases and places you can have your company listed to make sure that you're considered for the right opportunities. But in today's world, people are so used to using search, they're doing it at work too. So, it's really important if you're looking to grow your government contracting business through new deals, through new contract wins, you need to have a website that is easily findable in search for those certain keywords that people are looking for. It's probably not just your brand name, unless they're already aware of you,
Hmm.
but it's the services or specifically the problems that you're solving. That's really what they're going to search. And you want to make sure your website is showing up when they're looking there. So that was the first really big takeaway.
That's an interesting one. You always hear, which I've always thought was a myth, of people they're going to go look in SAM, they're going to go look in the DSPS, they're going to look here there, and it's like, no, I don't think so. Maybe years ago they might have done it, but we are so used to using search now, like you said, at home and for anything. Like I think most people, like if it's a product, the first thing you do is search Amazon or
Right.
Walmart Plus or whatever. That's the first thing. It's on your phone. It's so easy to do it. And then you're one click away from buying it. And if it's a service, then you're going to, if me, I'll pull up my phone and just open a browser and Google the whatever thing it is. And, or my maps app, that's another way, search just to see, is it going to show up in there? Like if it's a local type of service, like an oil change or something like that. Because we're just used to it being right there in the phone and showing us where it is on the map and giving us some options and stuff like that. So that's an interesting. What was number two?
Number two is just how much your website really matters in RFP selection. It's very tempting to think that a website is kind of a nice to have
Mhm.
in this space in government contracting, that wins come from RFPs and that it doesn't really matter what your website looks like. But the survey really didn't back that up. We found that as many as one third of budget owners in the government are exclusively vetting online in the RFP
Mhm.
process. And the website is absolutely the number one thing that they're looking at to do that vetting. Additionally, they're really relying on websites to find new vendors they want to invite to RFPs. And it's very common for them to invite at least sometimes a specific vendor to an RFP. So if you want to be on that short list, on the invite list, you've got to have a website that is searchable and findable in search engines.
Yeah, that's a really good one. One of my pet peeves on every website, it may be one of yours too, is when I go to a website, whether I'm doing it for business or personal, and there's no about section, or if there is, the about section is very vague. You're like, I don't know
Mm,
what this is or what's going on. Like it feels like a scam when you see that. But when you go on a website and you see like our team, you see a photo of the owner or founders, and there's a brief history of, I was in the army in 1995, and when I got out I wanted to serve, like their story,
mm,
like when you see that stuff, you're like, oh, they're a real company. Even if they can't back it up, they're a real company. They exist. There's people behind it versus, this is a site in the Philippines or somewhere
right.
and they're trying to scam people with orders or something. Because it's so easy to stand up a website. And if it doesn't have a lot of that data in it, you start to question the validity of the company. Like, is it a real company or whatever it may
Absolutely.
be? So I think to me, that's one where I always do a check on that before I buy something. Like even if I roll across something on social media, one of the first things you do is like, let's go look at the website. Let's see if the website, because social media, there's so many scams and things like
Mm.
that. Let's go take a look and see if they're real. So no, that's a good one. What was number three?
So this is actually a perfect segue from what we're just talking about. Confirming all the details are real.
Mm,
I think that a lot of times government buyers will start on your website and then find out who leadership is. And then they're going to go to LinkedIn to confirm that these are real people who have real experience in the areas that they say they do. And they're located in the places they say they're in. And there's a real photo there. A shocking majority, more than 80%, are using personal LinkedIns to confirm details during the RFP
mm.
process. So that really shows you how important it is that if you are in government contracting, you need to have a LinkedIn profile. It needs to be up to date. It needs to talk about your relevant experience. It needs a photo that was hopefully taken in the past few years. I think there's enough
That's a
AI
good
tools
one.
out there to help facilitate that
Yeah.
now. Even if you don't have one, you should get one. But yeah, so that was a huge surprise to us, just how important LinkedIn is in the RFP process
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, that's a funny one. We always joke about what we would call the glamour shots or the realtor photo, where you get on there and you're like, oh, this is this person. And then you get on a Zoom and you're like, I'm sorry, I think you're in the wrong place. And like, no, it's me. And you're like, it's you. I mean, was that photo taken 35 years ago? Like what happened there? There's a lot transpired in that photo in this call, and it's so funny how people are like, well, that's my best photo or whatever. Like, but it's not a real representation of you. And then when I get in there, to me, it's one of those things of, if you're fudging on that, what else? Right?
So true.
That's kind of where it comes from. And I know people, again, they like their photo and it is what it is, but um, gosh, it's such an easy thing to fix, to make sure that's there. I like making sure that the photo that you use in one place is where you use everywhere, so that, again, hairstyles change, clothing
Mm,
changes, we gain weight, we lose weight. But, if you have one photo on your website, one photo on your LinkedIn, you're like, this doesn't look like the same person,
right.
then it draws like unnecessary questions out of people, like what's going on here? Is this really, did I find the right person on LinkedIn? But it makes it so easy when you have the same photo and you're like, oh yeah, that's clearly Mike or whoever it is, right? um So the survey is really interesting. Were there any other questions or findings in there that you think people would be interested in hearing about?
Yes, I we also wanted to know about trade shows. Trade
Oh,
shows
that's a good one.
have been a an interesting space thanks to COVID. Obviously, before COVID, people were very eager to attend trade shows to connect
Hmm.
with this particular audience in government contracting and meeting government buyers. And then COVID put put all of that on hold for a minute or longer.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the question is it back? Is that a place I should be? Is should I be trying to continuing to prioritize that in my marketing budget? And so we wanted to ask a lot of questions around trade shows. And what we found is that yes, trade shows absolutely still matter. Government buyers are looking for new vendors, expecting to meet new vendors and evaluate them at trade shows. But the really interesting thing is it's even more important if you're trying to sell to state and local. We found
Hmm.
state and local rely more heavily on trade shows to find out about new vendors, new technology, new ways to help them do things better than even federal.
Hmm.
I think that's just a product of the fact that in state and local, you might not have access to all the same best practices and colleagues and others who can help tell you what is being done now. What are common technologies or smart ways that people are getting these projects done? There's a real hunger for that kind of knowledge. And they're going to these trade shows trying to learn those industry best practices or new innovations that can make their jobs easier or make them deliver better services for their constituents. So if you're selling to that market, trade shows are a really important part of your strategy in 2024.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I never thought of it before you said that, but it makes perfect sense because also, like on the federal level, we were at the NHOA conference a couple of weeks ago in Hawaii, and I knew three-quarters of the people that were there. I'm going to be at Vets in a couple of weeks, and I already know there's three-quarters of the people that are there. We were at 8A and other conferences. So, like, you see a lot of those people from conference to conference, and there's a slight change, but, you're still going to see a lot of the same companies that are there and how they are serving this market. But if you are not attending national conferences and you're just in the state and local area, you may get one conference a year or less, depending on if you go to industry conferences or something like that, and not see all those companies and what they're doing. So that's a very interesting perspective for state and local folks to look at. When you think about like the digital presence side of things, talk to me about in your mind what that even means, because there's some people that when they think their digital presence, some people think, well, it's just social media. Some people think it's just website. They think that's where it ends. What is your thoughts on like the whole digital presence for people?
Your digital presence absolutely includes your website. That's really the foundation of your digital presence. And your social media is part of that as well. But I like to think of your digital presence as the first impression that someone gets when they're looking for your brand. So if you type your brand name into Google and hit enter, what shows up? What links are there? So certainly, we hope your website should be
Hmm.
showing up for your brand name and your social media accounts should be there. But there's likely other items there. There might be news coverage about your
Hmm.
company, hopefully positive.
Hopefully,
There
yeah.
could be a Glassdoor or Indeed profile where employees have left reviews. And whether you have claimed that profile, whether you respond to those reviews, that sends a really clear message to people who are looking for you. If you have enough media coverage, you might have a Wikipedia article about your brand. That's certainly going to show up high in search and is definitely going to be a place that people are going to find information about you, especially if they're looking for a less biased opinion.
Hmm.
I know there are lots of opinions and thoughts on
Right.
Wikipedia and whether it can be trusted, but truthfully, even journalists go to Wikipedia to learn what a company does because Wikipedia requires you to take all the spin out. It's just the facts about what your company does. So that is a very quick shortcut to get right to what a company is delivering today, not the website speak that they want you to see, but just the facts. They're going to Wikipedia for something like that. And that's a huge part of your digital presence. There could also be Reddit threads. all sorts of other kind of forums. Yelp might come into play depending on what industry you're in. So, really, everything on that first, maybe even the second page of your search results, you should be considering that in your digital presence, and thinking about what people who are looking your company up, evaluating you for RFPs, what kind of information they're finding about you there.
Yeah. What to me, when I'm looking at those kind of things, regardless of why I'm searching on that person or company, and I look at a LinkedIn profile or some other profile, and I see, hasn't posted in 4 years or something like that. You're like, okay, that sends a sort of message. I was speaking to someone earlier today, and I said, hey, do you have a website? And they said, no, we've been working on it, but it's not really a priority for us right now. Okay, well, do you have a LinkedIn? No, we've been thinking about it, but like, okay, so how are you surviving in this market? You don't have a website, you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I went down the list of things and it was no, 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 or we're thinking about it, we're working on it. We'll probably get it done this summer. And I'm just like, how are you operating like this given what year we're in? Like, I just don't understand it. What kind of message do you think that sends when you hit a LinkedIn profile and they don't comment, share, like, there's nothing set up, it's just one sentence about what they do, and then you go and you look at the website and the copyright says 2013, stuff like that. I mean, when you have a presence, I think most people think I've got it covered. But when you have an outdated a presence like that, how does that impact people?
I think something you said earlier about scams really comes to mind. If I can't verify that you have an active LinkedIn, it raises questions. Why not? Why are you not
Mhm.
out there? And maybe the company you were talking to earlier, whoever it was, maybe they are surviving. Maybe they are getting some business. But think of what they're leaving on the table. I mean,
Right,
how much
right,
more could
right.
they get if they're doing whatever it is that is hopefully working for them today? But they added these digital touch points where they could reach so many more people who are probably searching for answers that they could be offering. How much bigger could they grow? How much more could they win if they did some of these relatively simple digital touch points?
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree. I think they're leaving so much on the table, and that was part of my point back to them was like, you really need this. Like, if you're going to do what you're talking about doing, like, we need this to even promote you and
Mm.
in what you're doing. Um, when you look at social media, obviously we're recording this in May of 2024. We may or may not have TikTok in any day now. We'll see about that. Facebook is what it is today. Instagram, some of the other tools that are out there. LinkedIn to me has been like the business place to be for government contractors for a while now. Do you have any insight on why LinkedIn is what it is, given that it's not that much different than some of the other platforms? I mean, there's a little bit, but why is it so much different than being on, and a requirement than being on Facebook and Instagram and some of those other platforms?
That's such a great question, and one that we think about and talk about a lot with our clients. I think there are a lot of factors here. One is COVID, better or worse, it has really blurred the lines between what is work and what is life.
Hmm.
So many of us started working from home, and you leave your computer on a little bit longer, or you come in at 9 p.m. to send one more email.
Right.
It just sort of like that line of, the difference between what I do during my workday and what I am at home. It got very blurry for all of us in a very real way. So I think that's one factor. Certainly, the demise of other social channels
Yeah.
is playing into that. X/Twitter it
Yeah.
is a place where people don't really know what to expect. TikTok obviously could be banned at any moment. And then you have a lot of trust issues around Facebook. And LinkedIn never had those trust problems in the public perception. So it's really become a place that a lot of people are spending a lot more time. And whether LinkedIn really intended to do that or it was just kind of a perfect storm that they're benefiting from, it doesn't matter. It's a great opportunity for government contractors to reach their buyers today. If you're not using LinkedIn to do that, you are leaving money on the table. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. I think one of my preferences on LinkedIn versus Facebook is it is all business for the most part. I mean, there's a little bit of personal life, things like that, but those are business people that happen to be sharing a little window into their life. But it's the ads. That's the biggest thing. Like the distractions are not there like they are on Facebook, where you may be scrolling and there's an ad, or there's something that you think it's an ad. You're not sure it's an ad. And so you question, is it an ad? Is it legitimate? This thing looks great. I kind of want to buy it. But why is it $4 or whatever it is, right? Where it seems like the ad placement is better in LinkedIn, and it's not as distracting, and you are there for the user's content, which seems to be the focus of LinkedIn for the most part versus some of the other platforms. So I definitely appreciate that about them. All of these platforms have one thing in common that I don't know if I agree with or like. I mean, it's out there, but um, I'd like to get your thoughts on the corporate versus the personal profile. Like, um, which ones are more important? Are they equally important? What are your thoughts on making sure those exist?
That is such a good question and a topic that we talk about with our clients a lot. A few years ago, corporate page was where we really advised putting a lot of your effort and energy. And we were starting to recommend having more of your executives write or publish regularly because people connect better with people. But in 2024, if your key leadership is not regularly posting, you're missing the point. That's absolutely the best way to grow connections and really become seen for the experience and expertise that you have. You want to be connecting that with real people, not just a brand page. So we are now advising everybody we work with to have at least two executives, depending on the size of the team, but probably one to two key people who are regularly publishing. And we understand that those leaders are typically very, very busy. So
Yeah.
asking them to publish is a big ask. Your marketing team can be helping them, whether it's sending them questions, doing some sort of interview and then turning that into content, outsourcing it to someone else. But that just has to be part of your strategy in order to make sure that you're positioning your leaders to get maximum exposure to your buyers.
Yeah. I think what happened, and I'd be interested in your insight on this too. I think people started to treat the corporate site or the corporate profile like a personal one, and they forgot the context within the corporate profiles. And so you would see them trying to generate the same kind of response on a corporate profile that they were going for on a personal one, and not using it as a corporate tool for recruiting and
Mhm.
brand awareness and things like that. I mean, that's kind of what I saw. And one of the things that I did when people are like, well, you have to have a corporate one, the corporate one's more important. I'd say, well, bring up Elon Musk's Twitter profile. Just bring it up real quick. How many followers does he have? Now bring up the Twitter one. How many followers does it have? So which one's more important? And you'd see like whatever it is, 900 million or whatever it is. I don't know. It's probably more like 100 million, but you'd see that versus like a million. And you're
Right.
like, so he's got like 100x, no pun intended, followers over there. Okay, now let's bring up Mark Cuban. Now let's bring up, and you start going through the people, and like, let's bring up Mark Cuban versus the Dallas Mavericks. And you start looking and you're like, oh, the leader has at minimum 10, 20, 30x following versus the brand. And even if you add up, like with Cuban, if you start adding up a bunch of his brands, or Musk with a bunch of his brands, he's still double, triple, quadruple all of the followers of the corporate brand on his personal. So it's like, well, which one's more important? Well, I'd say the personal one, but it's also the context of how they're using the corporate one, which is really a long way, winded way to say what I've seen in it. Does that make sense? Does that, Joe, with kind of how you've seen it kind of misused, and that's why it's kind of downgraded a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, open your phone. Do you have a single brand saved in your phone to text?
No.
We don't connect with brands. That's not part of how we operate. We connect with human beings. So it absolutely makes sense that you want to, on social media, connect with other people, not necessarily a brand. I wouldn't say I would recommend deleting your brand
Right,
present. I
right,
still think it's
absolutely.
important. I still think you should have it. I think you made a great point about it being great for recruitment content. If I'm considering going to work someplace, I want to know what it's like to work there. And the corporate page is the right place to share that kind of information. It can also help elevate some of those key leaders and thought leaders or subject matter experts, maybe who are just getting started or just building their network. You can help share their content. So there is a place for the corporate page. I think that it should be part of your strategy, but people want to connect with people. So
Right.
you have got to get your leaders comfortable talking publicly and sharing publicly, even if it's with help ghostwriting. That has to be
Right.
part of your
Yeah,
strategy.
absolutely. And I think even with the context of individual versus corporate, everybody does want to connect with the CEO of Nike, the CEO of whatever restaurant chain or whatever. But there's also like on the platform, like on LinkedIn, like you're recruiting, you're looking for employees, you're looking for executives, you're doing that kind of stuff. On Facebook, you're sharing coupon codes and different things like because they don't want to see that
Mhm.
you're hiring at Chick-fil-A or whatever. They want to see, oh, there's a coupon for a free sandwich or something like the audience is looking for different things on different platforms. And that's where I feel like again, people just said, well, the same thing should be on all, and
Mm.
that's where they made the mistake because it should be different on Facebook. It should be a little different on X. It should be a little different on TikTok. They should be shooting a funny little video that goes with it with a coupon at the end instead of just a slide with some music with a coupon, right? If they want the effectiveness. So it just I could probably talk about all this stuff all day long, but what do you have as maybe like two or three pointers for folks that are in government contracting that are trying to improve their digital presence so that when a contracting officer, a PM, somebody does a little bit of homework, they can check the boxes so they move to the next stage?
That's a great question. I think the very first thing you should do is audit your brand. So just type your brand name into Google, hit enter, and look at what comes up. That is that's the key piece of knowledge that you need. You need to know what is already out there. Then you can start to evaluate those links and see which of these can we optimize. Do we own these? Do we have logins to these? Or is this information that someone else has published about us and it's showing up here? So each link has to be dealt with differently depending on how that information got there. But that you have to start with that audit. You need to know what is out there. Once you've done that, then I would try and prioritize which of these do I think is helping me the most, and which of these do I think is moving the RFP decision makers further away from choosing me. And I would try and focus on those top priorities, the ones where it's not saying what you want it to say, a description that was true of your company 5 years ago, but you've really pivoted and you're offering way more than that now. You want to go and try and update that. If you want to be known for something new, if you want them to understand your full experience and capabilities, you need to be updating those things. But you can't update them until you know they're there. So you have to start with that audit.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the audits is probably one of the best things anybody can do periodically, even.
Mm.
Um, Final question here is: how hard is it, in your opinion, to deal with a bad reputation online? So for one reason or another, it's articles, it's you know government contractors don't have live Yelp reviews, but there are, like you mentioned, Glassdoor and places like that where people can get hammered for practices and things like that. How hard is it to deal with that and overcome a bad online reputation?
That is a complex question because the answer
It
is truly
depends.
it depends what the issue is.
Yeah.
I was talking to a government contractor the other day. He has one review, a Google review for his company, and it is a 1-star review with absolutely no comments. no context at all.
Mm,
And 2 days after that review went live, he got an email from someone promising they could remove negative reviews.
mm,
So kind of seems like someone just does this
on
to
purpose.
basically
Yeah.
extort you for money. So he was asking for advice. Can we get this removed? And in a case like that, your best course of action is likely to just solicit positive reviews. Well, you shouldn't ever solicit only positive.
Right.
Ask feedback from some of your biggest fans and try and balance it out. For something like Glassdoor, it's typically going to be similar advice. You can't delete reviews. You can respond to them though, and a public response can go a long way, showing that you're working on or that you're listening, that you're taking that
Hmm.
feedback into account and potentially even taking actionable steps to try and make the situation better. That can be really good. So even if there's a negative number or score there, people who are researching it are going to see your response and that can
Mm.
help.
Yeah. No,
So
that's
there's
great.
little strategies depending on what the issue is. Some of them very simple, some of them very
Yeah.
complex and
Yeah.
time consuming. It just depends.
Yeah, I've seen some wild responses to stuff like that, and I just have to shake my head a lot of times. But I'm in this. It's a Facebook group. It's probably one of the only ones I'm in. When we moved to Tennessee, I joined this group. It's should I eat there? And it is for the Tri Cities area, so it's the main three cities right in driving distance. And somebody always posts a photo with a receipt with their one paragraph review of the thing, and occasionally an owner will see it. And if it's good, oh, thank you, really appreciate it, that kind of stuff. If it's bad, you have the two types of owner response. The one blows my mind. Like I eat at a lot of seafood places, and the one response a lot of times, if it's not good, is, well, what do you expect? We're in Tennessee, right? And I'm like, oh, you didn't just say that, right? Because they're talking about like the variety or how fresh it is, and or whatever, right? And you'll see the owner attack the people, and then you'll see the flip side where an owner will say, "I have no idea how you had such a horrible experience. Come in, let us make this right," that kind of thing. And you'll see that person take them up on it, go back, have a good experience, and then update their review. And it's wild how people don't respond to those kind of things, or they bash the person making the review or what, because I've seen some wild reviews. It's kind of funny sometimes, but how they just don't manage the brand reputation. They're just like, well, it is what it is, and they just leave it alone. So interesting. So good discussion on brand management and the online presence and everything like that. I really appreciate it. I'm sure we will be talking more in the future about this kind of stuff, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to come talk to us today.
Thanks for having me. It was great.